Weighted versus lightweight utensils. If your hands shake, someone's probably pointed you toward adaptive utensils and told you to get the weighted ones. Heavier fork, steadier hand. You hear it everywhere. But when researchers actually tested that advice, the weighted spoon didn't win. Neither did the $200 electronic one. What beat them both was a cheap little thing almost nobody talks about, and I'll show you what it was. The people who get this right, the occupational therapists who fit these for a living, the caregivers who've bought the wrong one a few times, don't shop by the label. They ask one thing first: what is this hand actually struggling with? Get that wrong, and the right utensil can make things worse. So here's the plan. A 20-second check to find what's limiting your hand, the real story on weighted versus light, and that cheap detail that beat every fancy gadget in the lab. If you or someone you love fights with a fork at dinner, stick with me. The 20-second checks start here because it decides everything after. And to be clear, this will not diagnose anything. Only a doctor can. But it gives you 2 clues before you spend a dime. Clue 1. When does the shaking show up? Rest your hand in your lap, relaxed, and watch it. If it shakes most at rest and calms when you reach for something, that is a resting tremor, more common with Parkinson's disease. If it is quiet at rest and only shakes when you use it, reaching, holding a position, lifting a spoon, that is an action tremor, more common with essential tremor. You are not diagnosing yourself, just spotting the pattern, because it points to what will help. Clue 2. Does weight tire you out? Sitting safely at the table, pick up a normal utensil, then something heavier, a weighted spoon, or just a chunky serving spoon. If the heavier one makes your hand strain or shake more within a few bites, there's your answer. Weight is working against you, not for you. Those 2 clues are what should drive your purchase, not the word on the package. Be fair to weight first. Now, weighted utensils aren't a scam. Add weight, and you add inertia. A heavier object is just harder to shake. The wobble that throws a light fork around barely moves a heavy one. There may be a sensory piece too. The extra heft tells your hand where the utensil is, which can settle the movement. And this is what the weighted is useless crowd skips. In a recent test with essential tremor patients, the weighted spoon was the one people liked best. Another study rated a weighted spoon about as highly as a $200 electronic one, with no real difference. Even the Mayo Clinic lists heavier utensils as an option. So if your shaking is the action kind and your hands are strong, weight really can steady you. For that person, it's a cheap, sensible place to start. So why isn't it the answer for everyone? Because weight only helps if you've got the strength to carry it. And a lot of people reaching for it don't. A heavier fork turns every bite into a tiny workout. If you have Parkinson's, which brings bradykinesia, a real slowness of movement, or you're rebuilding strength after a stroke, or your grip's faded with age, that weight isn't steadying you, it's draining you. You start fine and finish shaking harder from pure fatigue. And the research backs that up. In one study of people with Parkinson's, the lighter utensil, around an ounce, gave smoother, faster movement than the heavy ones. It didn't prove why, but the light tool simply asked less of an arm already working harder. So the same weighted spoon that's a favorite for one person is wrong for another. There's no universal winner. It comes down to the hand. If that idea just saved you from the wrong purchase, that what your hand's doing matters more than the marketing. Do me a favor and subscribe. That's the whole job here. Cut through the sales pitch so you buy the tool that fits. Because next, the cheap detail that beat every gadget in the lab, and one tool that fights a tremor a whole different way. The case for lightweight. So if weight's wrong for you, tired hands, weak grip, that Parkinson's slowness, lighter is your lane. A light utensil asks less of the muscles you're short on, so you keep control to the last bite. And light doesn't mean flimsy. You want light plus easy to hold. What occupational therapists call a built-up handle. Wide, soft, grippy, so you're not clamping down to hang on. The cheapest version is a trick occupational therapists actually use. Foam grip tubing, slid over a fork you already own, for a couple of dollars. And if your grip's nearly gone, a universal cuff, a strap that holds the utensil against your hand, so grip stops being the problem. The detail that beat everything. Now the thing I promised, the one that beat them all. So far, we've only argued about weight. But in that essential tremor study, the utensil that carried the most food without dropping it wasn't the weighted one, and it wasn't the electronic one. It was a spoon with a deep, cupped bowl. Think about why. Half the battle with the tremor isn't lifting the spoon, it's keeping the food on it while your hand shakes. A deep bowl holds the food in through the wobble. No motor, no battery, a fraction of the price, and it was the strongest performer in that study's food transfer test. So ask a sharper question. Is your problem lifting the spoon or keeping food on it? If it's the food, the fix might be a better shaped spoon, not a gadget. The tool that actively fights the shake. Everything so far is passive. It resists the shake or gets out of the way. One more kind does something active. Electronic stabilizing spoons, the Liftware Steady, made by Ver I. Lee, which started as a Google project, or the Geno, have a motor inside that senses your shake and moves the spoon the opposite way. It's the only option here that actively counteracts the movement instead of just resisting it. For some people with a strong, isolated tremor, that's the difference maker. Two honest catches. They're not cheap. The Liftware's around $200, the Geno more. And those 70% less shaking numbers come from the makers, not independent testing. So treat them as claims. And the tip worth the whole video. Every U.S. state has an Assistive Technology Act program, and many run device loan libraries. So ask whether you can borrow one before you spend a cent. The network's called ATAP. So, where to actually start, and I mean start, because the smart move is to trial it, not marry it. Action kind shaking with strong hands? It's reasonable to try a simple weighted set, $30 to $40, ideally with a return policy. Hands that tire or weaken? Go light. The cheapest upgrade is foam grip tubing on a utensil you own. A built-up handle without the adaptive price tag. Grip itself the problem? A universal cuff. Fighting to keep food on the spoon? Try a deep bowl spoon. It was the strongest performer in that study's food transfer test. Severe, isolated tremor, and money's no object? An electronic stabilizer. But check whether your state's AT program has one to borrow first. Not one of those is the best utensil. Each is the best starting point for a specific problem. That's the honest version of best picks. So, the real answer. The one that holds up to a second opinion. It was never weighted versus lightweight as some rule. The evidence is genuinely mixed. Some do better with weight, some with light, some with a deep bowl, some with a motor. That's exactly why buying by the name on the box backfires. The smartest purchase is the one you can test before you commit, matched to what your hand is actually struggling with. One honest note, I test tools, I'm not a doctor. If your shaking is new or getting worse, get it looked at. But when it comes to the utensil, you now know exactly what to look for. If this helped you, or helped you shop for someone you love, subscribe to Grip Smart Guide. Next time, the gadgets that promise to make cooking easier on shaky, aging hands, and the handful that actually deliver.